It's time for the 32081 Scoreboard Show. Let's recap the latest weekly scores and highlights from around the county.
Hi, North Florida. This is Amber Rocha from the varsity Nease Cheerleading Team, and I'm here to welcome Anthony Richards from the Ponte Vedra Recorder and the Todd to the 32081 studios.
And thank you, Amber, for that great introduction into all the Nease cheerleaders and Coach Brooke Lovelace over there at Nease. And as Amber said, Anthony is in the studio with me. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing great, Todd.
I'm doing fantastic after the Eastside took care of the Westside on Friday night. Both Nease and Ponte Vedra coming out with big victories.
Yeah, big, memorable road victories too. So that's definitely a good week all around for up here on our side of town.
Well, I'm sure you're going to be ready to talk about the Ponte Vedra game, but let's hit the scoreboard first and see what the scores were from around the county. Ponte Vedra, of course, we're going to talk about this game in just a second. They won over Bartram Trail 28-21. Nease obliterated Creekside 45-7. Tecoy, they're 2-0 now, 28-22 over Westside. St. Augustine 34, Menendez 14, and Beachside continued their winning ways. I think they're 11-0 from last season now at 56-14 with their schedule getting ready to ramp up. So let's start with the Ponte Vedra game. First of all, 28-21. I watched the first half, but I know you were over there in person. What were some of the key takeaways that you saw from that game, Anthony?
A complete, bounce back for the Sharks, which is one of the questions, we had going, in, like, how do you respond from a tough opening emotional loss like they did in week 1 to the Panthers? And you worry, sometimes, especially high school kids, how are they going to let it kind of get to them and hang their head? And there was none of that for the Sharks. They came out mad after the week before, it seemed like, and they were determined. You could kind of tell it. Even in pregame warmups, there seemed to be a little bit of a focus, that just like hitting each other was a little more fierce than maybe you'd expect in week 2 of the season. So they definitely came in with the right mindset, and they were able to jump out to a 14-0 lead. And even though Bartram came back, the Sharks showed a lot of resilience the entire game and got a huge road win for sure.
Now, you talk about how they were going to bounce back, and one thing I wanted to ask you after watching the first half and to see what you kind of felt there, not versus just watching the game, but I thought the first 2 possessions were key because if I remember correctly, Ponte Vedra's defense came out and held Bartram Trail. Then the offense got the ball, of course, but when they got the ball, they were able to move methodically down the field. They were back and forth, but it felt like, Brian Case, Drew Price. I mean, it just seemed like things were starting to click a little bit. They were starting to find their comfort level, and it kind of carried through that first half. Like you said, even though Bartram came back to tie it, it felt like the confidence level really started to grow for the offense. But that first drive, when they stopped them, I'm like, oh, they came to play. I mean, it was like really, in my mind, I thought that they had put last week behind them and they were going full force. That was kind of what you kind of felt when you were out there as well.
Yeah, the defense kind of, helped set the tone, and the offense, had these, long, clock chewing, methodical drives, so it left the explosive, Bartram offense, on the sideline as well, and you pretty much controlled the clock, controlled the game, the first, quarter and a half for sure, definitely. And one of the surprises was actually the Sharks came out, instead of trying to establish the run, like maybe you'd think they would, they came out actually throwing the ball, getting it out of Drew's hands quick. And, I think David Doherty, the junior receiver, had like 3 or 4 catches on the opening drive. So they kind of came out passing, which, might have been maybe even a surprise to Bartram. And then they settled into the run from there. And really Brian was able to find some lanes, and the whole offense just kind of got going from there.
It also seemed like the offensive line now, we know the defensive line now 2 weeks in for Nease is playing extremely well, but it also seemed like the offensive line this week against Bartram Trail, which was a question mark for me because Bartram had been playing well with the defensive front. It sounded like they were really able to, or from my opinion, that they were able to contain that defensive line a little bit to give Drew a little bit extra time to read the pass if that was the case, but then also open up that running lane to where maybe he could get the 5 or 6 yards and make it a manageable second or third down.
Yeah, they definitely did a much better job, transitioning to week 2. Looked like they learned from week 1. They made some corrections and went back to the drawing board and came out, and had a much better, game plan. And Bartram's got some athletes, on the defensive front there, that can, and at times, they kind of had their way, but for the most part, the Sharks were able to limit them, limit their impact on the game, and and open up some nice running lanes. And Drew did a nice job of getting the ball out quick once he, making some quick reads. And then, if it wasn't there, don't hesitate, if the hole's there, run and just pick up 5 yards and say, okay, we got a nice 5-yard gain. Let's do 2nd and 5,
Now you mentioned that because I also want to talk about this a little bit later, but you talked about David Doherty and the success he has. It almost seems like Coach Steve Price has kind of figured out a way, kind of to what you're alluding to use that pass play to actually kind of like not only act as opening up the running game, which is kind of the backwards cliche, right? We always say the running game will open up the pass game, but that they're also able to use those short passes to complement the passing game, which seemed to me to kind of throw Bartram Trail off because, to your point, I haven't really seen Ponte Vedra do that in the past year and a half. So I was kind of like, oh, this is a little bit different here.
Yeah, and it was different. I mean, I'm sure it didn't just surprise me, but it did surprise them. But the Sharks looked really comfortable doing that. And I think the quick short passes actually also helped, get Drew in that rhythm early on, a rhythm that he was never really able to find the entire first game against the Panthers. So he's still kind of searching. This year he almost hasn't even been in a rhythm for a drive this year. So it was nice to see him getting that early rhythm, and then from there those short passes can become longer, medium to deep passes down the field as you get more time, and as the defense kind of they have to be aware now that you're going to hit those short passes. So maybe do a double move and go deep, and Drew took some chances deep, and it was just nice to see him in basically a full rhythm for an entire game.
Moving on just down the way just a little bit, because like I said, this one I was kind of billing as the Eastside versus the Westside, and the Eastside definitely took care of business against Bartram Trail as well as Creekside, but Nease just had their way in the second half of the Creekside, and they really avenged that loss that they had last year at home. To go, first of all, to let everyone know, if you haven't heard already, Nate Harry, who was the quarterback for Nease during that game, he actually got voted Jaguars Player of the Week. So congratulations to him. And his numbers show it. He finished with 239 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and also tacked on an additional 39 yards rushing. But here's the thing I wanted to talk to you about, Anthony, that I thought was really impressive with Nate's game and the game that Coach Drafts called on offense is that he hit 6 different receivers. And Felder led that group with 94 yards. But last year we saw a lot of Maddox Spencer, we saw a lot of Braden Felder, but now all of a sudden they're spreading that ball out a lot more. And the other thing too is that they got 95 yards after the catch. So what we were talking about Ponte Vedra before too, it looks like the Panthers are saying, hey, listen, you're not going to give us the run. I mean, although, KJ had a good night, but you're not going to give us the run. Guess what? We're going to supplement that with short passes over the middle to Tyler Gazin-Farrier. I'm going to hit Fletcher Reston. I'm going to hit Braden. And they're able to get those yards after the catch. So it seems like it's a different type of offense we're used to seeing, but it's also a very explosive offense at the same time. Yeah, I mean, and the receivers continue to, just amaze me. I mean, the fact that you have, again, that much depth, basically six deep, at the high school level is I mean, it's pretty impressive. Most high schools can't say that. You're lucky if you get 3-4 deep. The ones that you can really feel like you can really count on. But I think Drafts believes that if he throws the ball, and so does Nate, if any of these guys, the top 6 receivers, they believe their hands are sure enough to catch it, and they can make a man miss and make some plays happen. I mean, that's it's such a deep receiving core, and it's I'm sure it's only going to just keep impressing us week in week as they continue to develop as the season goes on. And the other thing too is KJ out of the backfield, he rushed for 67 yards. He's also got great hands as a receiver. They can catch and run afterwards. But it also seems like to me, just in the first 2 weeks, that the route running that they've put together has confused defenses because they're not bunched up. They're not running, like close patterns together, and it's really spreading the defense from sideline to sideline. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it stresses that defense out, and when you have so many options, you're already stressed out as it is, and then you combine, these complex routes or and whatnot, and the receivers feel comfortable and know how to run them. I mean, it's it's pretty dangerous, to go up against, and I'm just excited to see how they continue. I mean, because we're only 2 weeks in, so there's more to the game, the playbook, and the game plan that they haven't even gone into, delved into yet. So I'm excited to see what Draft still has up his sleeve, as the district
play starts and we get deep in this thing.
And switching to the other side of the ball, I had the opportunity to catch up with Coach Garth, also known as Coach G, after the game. And I asked him how he felt that, he had a pocket passer and Drew Price when they played at Ponte Vedra. They had Sean Aschenfelder, who's a Rutgers commit, who, is a dual threat type of quarterback. And I asked him how he felt about his defense and how they were able to limit Creekside and Ponte Vedra after 2 weeks. And his response was this. He goes, hey, I feel good, but I haven't watched film yet, and I kind of laughed about that because, they're always trying to get better. They're always trying to get better. And one thing he said to me that kind of stuck with me though, is he said, I can draw up the game plan, but what it is those 11 guys that are out on the field have to trust me and trust each other to get the play done. And there's no doubt that they have bought into the system that he's brought on the defensive side of the ball. And we talk about the offense, receivers, and in general getting better and better week after week. This defense is going to be nasty if it continues to grow and grow and grow by the end of the season.
Yeah, 7 points is all they've allowed, in each of the first 2 games. That's pretty impressive. And yeah, like I said, they're still learning themselves. I know I talked to Shamar McNair after the game, and he was just pretty excited and pumped up to be part of this unit, be under Coach Garth and learning under him. He said he came in and transferred in, and he was just accepted right away, just felt like a natural fit in the secondary there. And I think, he's made a big difference. And, you have new leaders and you have old leaders, the guys that have been here a while, just coming together, and it's creating, quite a fun unit to watch. And watching them fly around it's crazy. And I don't know what Coach Garth will think of up next, but I'm excited to see. And these guys I'm sure they can execute it.
Well, yeah. And first of all, I want to give a shout out to my man, the cornerback, Elijah. He ended up with 5 tackles and a beautiful interception in the game. So kudos to him. But the other thing too is that Coach G had talked about the fact that nobody's selfish on the defense. They all do it together. They don't mind the numbers that everyone gets. And when you look at it, you can tell because the numbers are across the board. But, if you just look at like Jacob Curry and Joe Miracle, they teamed up for a sack each, which came at huge moments in the game. Kyle Hurtado that's stepping in, we talked about him last week. He led the team with 8 tackles. And you got Dylan Rhodes and Cash Cobal with 6 tackles, and it goes on from there. And I think that's the other thing too, is that, and Shamar talking about how the team accepted him and stuff like that. I think that's a key thing, Anthony, because this team plays as a unit and not as individuals. And I think that is so important for a defense of this caliber.
Oh yeah. The best defenses seem to have it where, across the board, you have to worry about them. It's not just, okay, they have an excellent secondary, but we can exploit their young linebackers or whatever. But the defenses that are deep from top to bottom, those are the ones that you, at any level, that, just excel and present real issues for the opposing offense. And this is what this defense seems to have. And again, you have some guys that transferred in or are new, and as they continue to just grow and develop even more a part of the system, you think by week 8, they're going to be really, really clicking. And if they're only giving up 7 points a game the first 2 weeks, it's going to be interesting to see how, I guess they'll be shutting teams out, midway through the season.
They very well could be. It's going to be fun to watch, unless you're on the other side of the sideline. I'm just saying, on the other side of the field. I do want to ask you one thing before we go into talking about next week's games as well as the Super 10 rankings. But when I was at the Nease JV Gold game, someone said something to me after the game that I would kind of want to ask you about because it kind of got me thinking. The receivers had a heck of a night. They were going up for jump balls left and right. And this person said to me, they go, man, the receivers were finding the ball tonight. The ball wasn't finding them. And it made me think about us talking about how good the receivers are on varsity. And then I started looking at some of the positions. And if you look at this, Anthony, my question to you is how big of a program is Drafts, building here? Because, you have questions when you go into the next year, but then I start looking at next year, for example, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I am. You look at, okay, you're going to lose Tyler Gazenfar, you're going to lose Maddox Spencer, you're going to lose Fletcher Rustin, but then guess what? You still got Braden Felder, you still got Vernon Stevens, and then you add in Emmett Haggerty, Aiden Smith, and Nate Sievert, who are having great years down in at JV Gold and also getting some playing time in varsity. At quarterback, you always have a question mark, but you got Nate Harry there. And then you have Derek Hardy, who's a dual threat just like him, and they're actually using him as a running back to help out in some cases also. You look at the running back, you got KJ, and now all of a sudden you got Enrique Ordonez, who's running the ball fantastic. And the line gets an extra year better. So it just seems like Drafts is building a heck of a future for Nease football.
Yeah.
It's
I
scary
mean,
when you think about it. It's like, wow. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, I was just looking at this and it looks pretty good for the future.
Yeah, every coach talks about, competition is what we want. We want to, breed that competition, and you want to be able to, because competition just makes you even better. And I mean, that's what they've got. They've got competition at every level, and that's only going to create the best atmosphere and the best receivers, and arguably, could be the best receivers, in the area for years to come, if they continue to develop and grow as the guys that are, playing at the varsity level now. So, I mean, he's got something brewing there for sure.
And that's not to say with defense either. I was just, playing with the offensive numbers and people, because the defense is going to get Noah Hodge, Jacob Curry back. I mean, the list goes on, right? I mean, I think it's going to be fun to watch and see what they grow there. You and I at the beginning of the year season, so was it only 3 weeks ago, we were talking about how good the football is in St. Johns County. So I don't know if you've seen the Super 10 rankings that came out, but let me just bounce this off you real quick. St. Augustine's at 2, Nease is at 6, Ponte Vedra's at 8, Bartram Trail's at 9, and Beachside is at 10. I think we pretty much called it at the beginning of the season. What do you think? I mean, that's pretty impressive. 6 out of the 10 spots in North Florida are St. Johns County teams. Wow.
Yeah, that's making your mark right there. I mean, and again, we're so early in the season. I mean, these teams are only gonna, you figure they're only gonna get better as they continue to grow and kind of, get developed into the system. And also, I mean, I think they're there to stay. I think all year we're just gonna have, these St. Johns County teams just, proving their worth week in and week out. And it's gonna be fun, especially when they play each other. Those bragging rights are going to be a little extra this year, I feel.
well, yeah. And if you look at what you got, St. Aug, Nease, Ponte Vedra, Bartram Trail, and Beachside, and they all play each other in some way, form, or fashion. I mean, Bartram Trail has to play both, Nease and Ponte Vedra, for example. So it's a true testament to those kids out there, playing their hearts out and stuff, and, just representing St. Johns County in a great way. So it's really, really fun to watch. So we'll see what's to come the rest of the season. It's definitely gotten kicked off to a great start, though, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about next week. Let's start with Ponte Vedra and Baker County. This is a tough game for Ponte Vedra. Luckily, they're at home, but Baker County, from what I've heard, I talked to a friend of mine that's out in that area, and he knows about the football team out there, and he said, as strong in the past, no, but when they say that, Anthony, you kind of got to take it with a grain of salt because they're always tough, right? And they got a lot of players out there. I do like Ponte Vedra in this game, though. I think they really found their rhythm against Bartram Trail. Watching the game, I thought their confidence was up. Like you said, I was a little worried about how they were going to respond after the Nease loss. But I do like Ponte Vedra. I like Drew Price. I like the defense in this one. I think Brian Case also has a big game, so I picked Ponte Vedra to win.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a good game, I think, either way. I know Baker, they may not, but they may not be maybe quite the team maybe they are usually, but in most years, but like they've always got athletes, and they just know how to play ball, in Baker County. So they're always going to present a tough test, and I know they're going to, bring their A game. I'm sure they're going to bring a pretty good share of fans too, because they're known to travel pretty well. So all of Baker County kind of comes out to support that team. So it's going to be a good test for Ponte Vedra, and I know it's the first home game of the year in the regular season. So the Shark Tank will be rocking, and I'm sure the fans are eager to welcome the boys back after the big Bartram win. So, we talked about after week 1, seeing how they respond in week 2 after the tough loss. Now let's see, responding after a win is also something, that the coaches like to see. So we'll see how they respond after that.
So before we talk about the Nease game, I got to ask you a question. Did you get Coach Drafts and Coach Price on the phone and say, hey, can you guys schedule these to where I can actually not have to drive that far and be able to catch both games? Because 2 weeks in a row now, I think you're going to have to drive less than 5 miles to a game or something like that. Yeah. They made it nice on you. You're right there at Ponte Vedra, and you got Nease at home also.
Yeah, no, I know. And I'm also kind of hoping to sneak by Beachside, because I know they're hosting Menendez. So
check you out.
Yeah, it's just a whole trifecta of home games. After everyone was on the road last week, now they're at home this week. So,
so we know that Nease took down Ridgeview, and I thought maybe I could get some additional listeners if I said I was going to pick Ridgeview in this game, just for people to say, "Did you hear how crazy Todd is on this?" and tune in. But can't do that. I think this is going to be a good game for Nease. I think it's going to be a victory. I think that they're probably going to see. We're going to see multiple quarterbacks after the first half play. I think we're going to see some younger players, 2 or 3 deep, get in the game second half. I think this is an easy victory for Nease. I think it's a good way to end their first 3 games and roll into the remainder of the season.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially with from Davenport, where Ridge is having to travel from, and especially after going off of last year, a lot of the similar players. Last year, the Panthers handled him pretty good on the road. Now this year they get him at home, and especially the way they've been looking, I'm thinking maybe another pretty convincing victory for sure. A couple touchdowns, maybe 30, 40 points, and maybe even the defense gets a shutout this time. Who knows?
Yeah, it's going to be I think they might get a shutout there. At least the starters, I think so for sure. But I know that the whole team, the whole defense will pull for a shutout. But I think this is an easy game for them. I know they're geared up for it. They're not looking past it from next year. I've talked to some of the players. So again, though, I think this is going to be a huge double-digit win for them. But again, so that will be Ponte Vedra hosting Baker County at the Shark Tank, and Nease will be hosting Ridgeview. So, and for those of you that don't know, Ridgeview is out of Central Florida. So with that, Anthony, thank you again for joining me. I can't wait to see you out at Nease this week in between your games at Beachside and Ponte Vedra. So I hope you have some safe travels, and thanks for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Always a pleasure.
As always, everyone, be sure to follow Anthony on Twitter, ANTNY Rich. That's ANTNY Rich. Also, check out his articles. He has great ones out there at the Ponte Vedra Recorder. And as always, I'm the Todd, and thank you for listening to the 32081 Scoreboard Show.
Thank you for listening to the 32081. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Please don't forget to subscribe to the show so you can join us for the next episode.
I never miss an episode. It's the best.
Until next time, take care.